I'm I'm unable to hear you guys.
Broadcast.
Yeah. Now I
Okay,
can.
okay, we
Okay,
got
good deal.
Stetson. So anyway, welcome back to Baxter County Roundtable, episode 44. Stetson Painter is our special guest today. Um, we're gonna do some introductory business first, and then we'll get to Stetson, and we'll just go crazy.
Yeah, Baxter County Roundtable is presented in part and sponsored in part by the Baxter County Republican Committee. Also sponsored by Mountain Home Heating and Air Conditioning. Voted best in the Twin Lakes area for 2 years in a row, 24 and 25. They're the largest Goodman dealer in the Twin Lakes area. Uh, Twin Lakes in the Twin Lakes area, Mountain Home Heat and Air and Goodman are two names you can trust. Also, we have a new sponsor, and that is James Boyette State Farm Insurance. James Boyette's been in the Mountain Home area for over 10 years. He's on Highway 62 East at 1330 Highway 62 East. Give him a call at 870-425-4540. So let's get right in with Stetson, and we'll come back later to our sponsors.
Okay, my name is Joe Bryant. My partner here is Russ Gillis, and we have Stetson Painter joining us from Little Rock, I believe.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
And Stetson Painter is Arkansas District 3 state rep. He's my state rep, and I believe Russ is as
Yep.
well.
Yep.
You want to start by telling us what your area is, what you cover?
Sure. So District 3 is Mountain Home on north all the way up to the Missouri line. So like Lakeview, Gamelia, Clark Ridge in Baxter County. Then we go over to the western half of Fulton County. So Viola, Elizabeth, Vidette, um, go over to Jeep and so forth. So that's my area. So there's an old truck stop that's in the middle of Fulton County. That's kind of where I stop at.
Okay, how far south do you go?
I don't go. I go maybe a few hundred yards on the other side of the bypass. But again,
Okay.
when you look at the district, it kind of looks like a bunch of kindergartners drew the maps out.
There's a lot of that happening lately, it seems. Well, and it looks like they had their crayons out too.
Yeah.
You're
Some
trying to say somebody gerrymandered that?
I'm not going to say that.
Okay, all right. I guess maybe if you could explain to us a little bit about. I know there's a fiscal session, which I believe we are in the fiscal session now.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
And there's a legislative session.
Yes, sir.
So tell us how that all works.
So constitutionally, and every even number of years, we do a fiscal session, and then every odd year we do a legislative session. So by the Constitution, the fiscal session is a lot shorter. It's about 30 days or so. The legislature could amend that once, up to 15 extra days. In this general session, that's in the odd years, it's about 90 days, and we can continuously to extend that several times.
Okay, now you're in fiscal session as we speak.
Yes, sir.
And now, how long have we been in the fiscal session?
So we started in early April, and so we're trying to wrap up everything on this Wednesday, and then gavel out for a couple of days, and then come back for a special session to cut income taxes.
That sounds good.
Yeah. Hurry back for that one.
If I could say something in a fiscal, what's unique about a fiscal session is we cannot take up any non-appropriation bills without a 2/3 vote. And so for the first time, if I remember correctly, in Arkansas history, we did that this fiscal to increase the homestead tax credit to $675.
Good deal. Good deal.
Now, is there anything exciting or controversial happening that you can tell us about?
Well, I think a lot of those bills are controversial right now. We're debating the U of A, the University of Arkansas's budget right now. There's some issues with them using some money to pay athletics. There's another one with Euler with the gender studies that's been controversial. And then you may have seen in the news some constitutional officers' budgets with these large pay increases. Now, last session we did pass a employee pay scale, but now we're seeing some of these folks are kind of taking a little bit advantage of that and increasing salaries for upper level by 50, 60, 70%. And that's been kind of rubbing the legislature the wrong way. And so you'll see tomorrow in joint budget that the treasurer's office, for example, we've killed that budget twice now. They're going to add another amendment that's just going to level off their budget with no pay increases. And they're going to have to come to legislative council, which is a council that does business in the interim out of session, to ask for those raises.
Now you said legislator wages. Is that right?
No. This is for the constitutional officers and their
Oh, okay.
employees. Yeah.
Okay.
The legislative pay is set by the Independent People's Commission.
Okay. So you're not voting to raise your
No.
pay. Okay.
So now,
That's good.
I've been reading about this, I guess this special counsel or whatever for the governor. What's his name?
Prefori, yeah.
Okay, where's that stand?
So that the governor's budget passed today. There was an amendment by Senator Rice to cut that position out. It failed in committee, and the overall governor's budget passed at a joint budget. It passed the Senate. It has passed the House now and will be signed into law as an appropriation.
So what's his salary?
So his salary is still set over a little over 200 something thousand. I think it's like 265. There was arguments on both sides. One argument is to let the governor have the option to hire her personnel. Then there was other folks that were arguing, that's a lot of money. What have we gotten from that? We're needing mid to lower tier level folks in state government, and we're paying somebody like that doesn't come around and answer questions to the legislature. How can we justify that? And ultimately, the budget passed today, really with little to no fireworks today in the House.
Well, I have a question. Every business owner I know is always trying to cut their budget. Their payroll taxes and their payroll, the input cost of running a business. You run a business.
Mm-hmm.
I've ran a business. Joe runs a business. Your profit is best controlled by cutting your expenses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everywhere you look, AI is cutting people's expenses across corporations throughout the country. When is the state of Arkansas going to start realizing some, I guess you could say, economy of scale by using some AI?
Well, I think we're looking into that. My issue with what we're doing now with the pay scales and everything else is 1 minute we have departments saying, hey, we need employees. We need mid to lower level employees. The foot soldiers that are out there on the ground helping everyday taxpayer. But yet, in another breath, we're wanting to give chiefs of staff, comm directors 80% pay increases. You can't function a state budget like that.
That's garbage.
It is. And so that's the problems I've had. Folks that called me and said, hey, why did you vote no on this or whatever? And those are the dynamics behind that. I get very upset when we can't fulfill positions in Mountain Home, Arkansas for state government, but we can find a $60,000 pay increase for somebody.
Yeah.
That doesn't jive with me.
No, thank you.
No.
It,
whose ideas? Where are these ideas coming from?
so what happened is last session we passed an employee pay plan. Okay. We're saying you can increase salaries up to here for everybody. But what's happening is just because you can increase it way up here doesn't mean you should. What they're doing, they're taking advantage of it, and they're going all the way.
There's no incremental steps to it or prerequisites in order to be able to.
So that's left up to the individual secretaries or constitutional officers.
Sounds like we need some new folks down there.
Okay.
Now that the primaries are already over, they know that they're a shoe-in for another 2 years or 4.
Well, I can tell you this. That has been one of the biggest stir-ups down here in fights. And like I said, I've voted on to help kill budgets because just to send a message is like we cannot continue to do this anymore. And so I was more red this time around than I ever have before.
Okay. We're talking about the budget now. Is this Sarah Huckabee's budget that we're talking about?
So it's the governor's proposed budget, and then the legislator has tweaked some stuff. Plus, 2 years when we look over the overall budget, you have different budgets from the constitutional officers and the different secretaries and agencies.
Yeah, because I think it was today I read that Sarah Huckabee's budget went up pretty massively. And
so we went from a $6.5 billion budget to $6.7 billion budget. Some of that was from the governor. Some of that's from the legislature.
So which constitutional officers are the ones that's asking for the 60, 50, 60, 70% raises?
So you have the lieutenant governor's office, which in their defense, they came back and lowered it down to 10%.
That's reasonable.
We went from 70 down to 10. So and then you had the Secretary of Treasury. They had tremendous increase in salaries. We killed their amendment today. We'll added another amendment this evening. That's going to keep their budget flat. Then they're going to come back to Legislative Council and ask for those salaries, and it may or may not get approved.
Do they have to provide justification?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I would, and that'll be screened very thoroughly, I suggest.
The way this body is, I definitely can assure you, it will be screened heavily.
Okay, good deal.
Yeah, we need conservative reaction.
Look, at the end of the day, state of Arkansas does not have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem.
Well, I think that's
And we've set the RSA at 93%. Folks have to spend 93% before they get the extra 7, and they have to justify that 7.
Okay.
That seems to be and that goes back to my question about achieving some economy of scale somewhere. You know? AI is replacing workers throughout the country, everywhere except in government. Government continues to grow via people. It seems to me that, as we continue to streamline and improve the AI, and I'm not completely sold on AI, but it is what it is. And as long as we can utilize AI to accomplish some of the goals, I don't see why we can't do that and reduce the number of actual bodies in our government accordingly.
Right.
Right.
I think you'll
I think
start
you'll
seeing
start seeing
state government
government
to slowly do that within the next year.
year.
There's been some
There's been some
programs that have been
programs that have
tried
been
out,
tried out,
and we're waiting
and
for
we're
some of
waiting
that
for some of that
feedback.
feedback.
I wasn't exactly sure what you were talking about with the 93% and the 7 has to be justified. And the real question I have is, are there any cases where the 7% wasn't argued for and attempted to, is that making any sense? I want to know if there's any 7% numbers that have been turned down, or did they
So,
all?
so there's a
So
lot
there's a
of the
lot of the
7%
7%
that has
that has
zero in it.
zero in it.
But what we're talking about is
is
the
the
RSA, the
RSA,
funding
the
mechanism that we do
that we
state
do
budget.
state budget.
So
So
category A
A
is what
is
we
what we
need.
need.
That's funded
That's
at 93%.
93%.
Okay.
So
So
you don't get
you
the
don't
extra
get the extra
7%
7%
until you've spent
spent
and done your
and done
job
your
at
job
93%.
93%.
Then you
Then
justify that extra 7. So there may
So
be
there may be
opportunities that agencies can say, hey, look, we've done everything we needed to do this fiscal year. We don't need that 7%. So it goes back into general revenue, into surplus, and then we can either figure out what that's going on.
Okay, well then, does that happen ever?
Yes, it does. We've actually sent money back. We're going to have a little over $200 and something million surplus, and that's why you're going to see us do an income tax. And that's why you've already seen we do us a homestead tax credit increase for $75 for every person out there that's got a home and that does homestead tax credit.
Okay, that's a satisfaction.
And my goal is to come back in the general session in 27 and do another income tax credit.
Okay, so this budget stuff we're talking about now, that I think you're saying is passing, mostly is gonna pass.
It's a lot of it's already passed now. Tomorrow we've got probably 20, 25 appropriations. They're very minor. Some that have already failed that we got to relook at it again and work those kinks out and then move forward.
And then does that go to the Senate?
Some of these are already Senate bills so they've already.
Okay, that came to you.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I get it now.
So
It's all good.
overall, our budget's going to increase about 200 million.
So I could tell you this off my numbers. I'll just tell you the grand total for our budget is going to be $6.7 billion. That's up about,
Last year it was 6.5.
Yes, that percentage is like 2.9% of a government increase.
Well,
That's not huge. I mean,
it's not huge.
And I can break down it. There's, we can get in the weeds, but there's some additional appropriations this time around that were not in there last time, like $7 million extra for the drug task force that was being totally underfunded. Now this $7 million gets them up to funding levels to take in drugs off our streets, which our area, talking to prosecutor attorney David Etheridge, they were definitely being underfunded. And so that $7 million is going to get them at the levels to do the job that they needed to do.
well, is there anybody down there looking into stuff that we don't need? Because
Yes.
I'm a kind of guy that says, let's starve the beast and make this whole thing smaller.
So I think you're seeing a lot of that. I think you're also, so there's some monies to help us improve our SNAP rate, which we're seeing a little bit of, I wouldn't say fraud, but duplicate of services and everything else like that. We've spent a few million dollars in doing that. That's actually going to help us in return get money back, because you're having a lot of duplicates out there. We can save money in that way. You're looking at appropriations with these salaries that could save some money if they're not going to do it. Also, too, is in different higher ed departments, they've been shooting down budgets, whether they're big or have certain classes that they don't need to have, like gender studies and so forth like that. Those have been topics of discussion that you've seen budgets go down. And at the end of the day, we made some investments in this budget actually to return some money back, making government a little bit more streamlined at the end of the day for you and me taxpayer.
Yeah, well, that's good. I mean,
Yeah.
I just, there's so much talk now about all this fraud that's out there, and I find it hard to believe that it's not everywhere.
It is everywhere. I sit on the audit committee for education. And I'll tell you, a few months ago, we had an audit. We were had some schools that were defrauded out $5 million of Arkansas taxpayer money that were from higher ed. That somebody got online from another country, applied for scholarships, got it, or got some state aid money, and the next thing you know, once that money hit that account, they're gone, vanished like in thin air. And that happens a lot. So we've invested some money to improve those kind of things to make sure we're not losing that kind of amount of money anymore.
Uh, give us a little bit more explanation on what the University of Arkansas is trying to do with the paying the athletes with
So that's
taxpayer money.
You picked a hot topic to discuss right there.
Oh, I know.
That budget has been shot down twice. I think tonight we may have an agreement between the legislature and the in the university, but I don't want to go into the details of that to make sure everybody's happy with that. But what they're doing is wanting to use money to out of academics to pay athletics, and a lot of folks are upset by that. I don't agree with that. If the state's gonna give you money or students are gonna pay to go to U of A, our flagship university, then they should be using that money to get academics to get that degree, not be paying for football. I'm a big football fan, U of A, whatever. They shouldn't be doing that. It should be coming from different areas. I mean, we just saw yesterday that the U of A cut the tennis program. And so at the end of the day, the university is very big to find those reserves and to pay for athletics. I mean, we've got Walmart, we've got Tyson, we've got other businesses that big that can help in that. I mean, they're right there in the backyard of U of A. I mean, if you need to make Walmart's logo a little bit bigger on the turf field at Razorback Stadium, and that helps you fund that program, then do that. But you shouldn't be coming to the legislature wanting more money to fund not academics, but fund sports.
Yeah, and especially when you've got college athletes that are already getting a free education. Now they're getting the NIL money, and some of them to the tune of millions of dollars per year. Okay, now correct me if I'm wrong, but there was discussion originally, or back a few months back, about making that tax-free, Arkansas tax-free.
So
Is
that's
that dead, or
last
is that
session.
still?
No, so last session we passed that, and I think I voted in favor of it. But I can tell you that's one of the votes I wish I did not vote for. That's one of those attaboys that I would like to have back, because I think that's at the end of the day, I think it's just wrong. You see at the end of the day, students making millions in NIL, and then we're going to go ahead and tax free that thing. That's just not right. At the end of the day, that's not
No.
right. At the time, well, that was towards the end of session. Not making excuses. It is one of those votes I wish I had back, because today I would definitely vote no, and I probably would recruit other members to vote no. And I think a lot of other colleagues would say the same thing, that they would probably vote no now, knowing all the extent of that today.
Yeah, it seems like, I hate to say it, but it's almost like the liberals, once they get their foot in the door, and then they just keep asking for more and more and more and more. And it's like, the poor old guy out here that's struggling to put his children through college,
Yeah.
working himself to a death, and his child is probably going to end up with a sizable loan to pay back before it's over with anyway.
Well, that's why we need good, strong conservatives to push back on those liberals and grow a spine.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that, and that came from that bill was written by a fellow Republican, and like I said at the time, you look at the big picture, it kind of made sense at the time, but now looking on the other side of the fence, it's like, we should have debated that bill a little bit longer and maybe killed that and see the other effects of that bill. I mean, when you're going to a university, you're paying 30,000 a year at the U of A, roughly right in there. Let's just say that's the average. That's a lot of money. I mean, at the end of the day, I couldn't afford that when I was young. If it wasn't for the military, I wouldn't have been able to go to college and become the first person to graduate college in my family. And so we're almost making those kind of universities unattainable for the
The average
working
person.
class. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and that defeats the purpose of having a flagship university.
Hmm.
You know, some of your smartest children going to college come from the working class.
Yeah.
The ones that are struggling and end up with $100,000, $200,000 student loan by the time they graduate. And then they're hamstrung with that student loan for years. And people wonder why they can't get ahead.
Hmm.
You know, and then you've got these athletes that come for 1 year, they get a several $100,000 in nil money, and then they're gone the next year, and they didn't even pay taxes on the nil
Yeah.
money that they got
Yeah.
last year.
It would be nice at the end of the day if the federal government can do something to rein that in. We know the NCAA is doesn't have the backbone to control that. This is an ongoing problem throughout the country. Period. And so the feds may have to get involved because at the end of the day, when I went to college, those sports guys, they were getting tuition free. You got clothes of the university. I mean, it was not a bad lifestyle to be a player, regardless if it was football, cross country, basketball, baseball, whatever it may be. It wasn't a bad life. Where the rest of us, we were having to pay our tuition,
Yeah.
and so forth like that. So unfortunately, I don't know if we'll ever get back to those days, but it needs to be rein in because right now it's literally the wild, wild west.
And that was passed in the legislative session, right?
Yes, last session. Yes, in
Okay.
25.
Maybe this next legislative session you need to amend that and put some stipulations in there.
There's already talks about doing that. There's already talks about maybe amending that in the 27 session.
You know, and if the tax free is only as long as they're committed to the state of Arkansas and the University of Arkansas. If they leave prior to their graduation, then they got to pay back the tax portion of it. Maybe that would help them retain some of those better athletes.
I like that
instead of them
idea.
transferring every year.
I like that idea.
Well,
Come up with one every once in a while. What's that old saying? Even a blind squirrel gets an acorn every once in a while.
There you go. Here you go.
But I mean, that just it really bothers me to watch these athletes come and go a year at a time, just leveraging their nil from one school to the next.
Right.
And some of them, just like John Calipari, I heard him on radio back during basketball season say, some of these kids will never graduate. They will go through 4 to 5 years, some of them maybe 6 years. They'll get all the nil money, they'll play their sports, and they'll still, at the end of that 5 or 6 years, not have a degree, even though they've soaked the universities and the taxpayers for several hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars of nil money. And that is just wrong.
And I think too is so right now the university's having to pay that NIL money. It's not coming out of state general revenue. That's not coming out. So if Walmart wants to put in $100 million in NIL money and then university writes a check to Russ there and says, hey, you're so good at basketball, we're going to give you $6 million, then it's not coming out of that. They're paying that, but they don't have to pay the taxes on it. But at the end of the day, I do like your idea. If you're at the university, then good. But the minute that you leave, you need to pay that back unless you graduate. I think that's a great idea. Like I said, that's one bill maybe out of 2 or 3 that I'd like to go back in time and change because I'd like to have that back.
Well, everybody, hindsight's always 2020.
Okay, well, I think we beat that subject pretty
Yeah.
well. Now, I don't know if this is an appropriate conversation to have here, but the news is pretty busy these days, and I mean just uh, assassinations, attempted, that sort of thing, and
Mhm.
I don't know if Arkansas state government has any discussion on that, or because I think one of Russ's favorite politicians, Kamala, is either is either coming or has been here.
She was here
Yeah.
last week.
She was here last
Yes.
week, so
Y-
I mean security is an issue here too in the state level.
Yeah.
Does
I'm so
Nobody
glad you
wants
said that.
nobody wants to
I
hurt
knew he
her.
was a secret Kamala fan. I just knew
I
that
man
secretly.
I've been chewing on that all day to waiting to. I just
So
really wanted to say that,
no,
but
that's great.
seriously,
Yeah.
is
So
there any business
yeah,
for the
so
state?
we're actually putting security. We've actually there's a major construction going underway here at the Capitol, putting um, uh, concrete barriers, metal barriers around the Capitol to make it a little bit more safer. We've got our first ever bomb sniffing dog here in the Capitol, the Secretary of State, and we actually increased the Secretary of State's budget, what handles the Capitol Police,
Yeah.
to hire a few more officers and to increase security presence, whether that's metal detectors and different other things that are in there, more cameras and so forth, to make this place, the people's capital, safe. In the House side, we have our own security, we have our own sergeant of arms, and then we have our own little group of redcoats. Some of those members are former police officers or military, and so they're the ones that charge to protect us. I know that they got kind of the similar thing in the Senate. I think they're called the gray coats or something similar to that. So there's some major upgrades, but we do think of that because at the end of the day, we live in a volatile political climate, and unfortunately we do have members that get threatened. You have a very
And the
our
governor, I
governor.
imagine the
Yeah,
governor.
the governor. We have she's has a high profile, the highest profile governor we've ever had. So she gets routine, I'm sure, threats and so forth that the state police handles and so forth like that. You've had that with other with other constitutional officers, and then at the end of the day, legislatures. Somebody may be upset because so and so voted wrong on a bill or different ways. Those do happen, and so the state police gets involved through the sergeant at arms, and not going into too much detail, they give that some of that extra precaution and protection to that member.
So anyway, I suspect you. I mean, you're part of your job is you have people trying to contact you all the time,
Mhm.
giving their opinion or asking questions or
Yes,
whatever.
yes.
What does that get more or less during the session, or is it any different?
In a fiscal session, it's a little bit quieter. We're debating appropriations, not really hot and sexy subjects, say the least,
Uh,
people. But at the end of the day, we're dealing with appropriations. In the general session, my phone probably rings 20 to 25 times a day, if not more. Emails blasting in through. People show up, an organization or whatever, want to grab your ear for a minute and talk. 90% of those are very calm, cool, and collected. You do get a few people that are really heated, really passionate about that. They just want to be heard at the end of the day, whether you agree with them or not. Most people just want to be heard. And so I try to hear everybody's issue, whether I agree with it or not. I try to hear that and find some points of agreement and try to lower that down if it gets a little too hot at the end of the day. And so very thankful, knock on wood, I've not ever felt threatened by a phone call or a in-person discussion, and I hope that continues.
Well, not all of those phone calls or emails are mine, so
yeah, I was kind of curious if you were getting any calls from podcasters.
Every
Yeah,
once in a
I've been
while,
keeping an eye
every
on
once in a
Russ.
while. Well, I'm not
I do
Kamala, so he
call him
doesn't
pretty.
call me very often.
I call him fairly regularly. We talk. He calls me too sometimes. So, but I'll say this, and I'll give you kudos. Every time I've ever called, you either answered my phone call or you called me back within a very short period of time as soon as you got a chance. So, You know,
I-
from that perspective, I've got all the respect in the world for you for doing that because
well, I
I know not
appreciate that.
everybody does that.
Well, I try to do that with everybody. I'm human. I make a mistake. I may get to drop the ball. I drop the ball, may forgot to respond to an email out of hundreds or a phone call out of several that we get. But at the end of the day, I enjoy visiting with folks, whether we disagree or agree on an issue. I love the feedback because that reassures me that people are watching their government. And as an elected official, that makes me feel good about they're watching us. They're making sure that we're doing the best that we can with their in the steward of their tax dollars or policy going forward. I've always said this. If I'm in state government or federal government and the phone quits ringing, the emails stop coming in, it's going to be a sad day because then I feel like people have either don't have any more faith or trust in me or no longer in their government. And that will be a sad day.
Yeah, they've given up. And unfortunately, way too many Republicans have given up or have just checked out.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons we're in the situation we're in the federal government,
Mhm.
because I feel like so many people have, as soon as President Trump got reelected, a great number of them put their feet up on the footstool and said, "Hallelujah, we won.
Mhm.
Trump, take us to the promised land."
Yeah.
And they have duly checked out. They don't vote in local elections. They don't vote in midterm elections. They only vote for president.
Well, there's that, and I mean, let's be honest. A lot of Republicans don't vote conservative. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and I mean, for me, that's a really sour spot.
Yeah, like you voting for Kamala. You know.
Yeah, well, but I've changed my ways on that.
Oh,
I've
you need
seen
to switch your hat.
my mistake, and I'm correcting it.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I
Stetson,
think
you got
too is
anything else that you want to?
I think at the end of the day, I think it's not only Republicans and constituents, but I think it's also on elected officials. I think it's 50-50. I try to, when I'm back home, to try to go to different events, try to be out there with the people and visit and just listen to their concerns. I think that's one thing that doesn't happen is the higher you go, it's kind of like in the military. That sergeant and that private are pretty close, but the colonel and the private is not that close. The higher you go, you start to get, a lot of ground difference. And I think at
You
the end of
lose
the day, that's
touch.
you do lose touch. And I think that's what I love about being in state government is you could still see me at Walmart or Hirsch Feed and Farm Supply buying my chicken feed. You can still see me at the Second Amendment rally. You can still see me, eating dinner with a bunch of veterans on a Wednesday night. I'm still accessible. And I think sometimes elected officials lose that. And also too is I think as constituents we lose making sure our elected officials are accessible. And I've given my number out. I'll give it again before we leave. Call me. It doesn't matter if you like what I'm doing, don't like what I'm doing, good, bad, or ugly. If you have comments, concerns, or you're having issues, feel free to give me a call. Because at the end of the day, I'm elected here by the people. I represent the District 3. I've got to take care of my people too.
Well, since you mentioned it, why don't you give your contact info out now before we
All,
forget?
all right. My cell phone number is 501-733-3203. Feel free to call me about any issues, whether you're having an issue with state government, federal government, or you just want to chit chat about an issue, or you have a legislative idea, or you want to say, hey, you're good at a job, or hey, you're doing a bad job. What are you doing down there? Call me anytime. I'll be glad to visit with you.
And there's a website, arkansas.gov, I think, or
So there's a couple of websites. If you want to watch your state government in action, you can go to the Arkansas House of Representatives. They have video live of all the committees, all the meetings that we're having, and floor sessions and that. Then you can also go to ArcLeg. You just Google both of these, ArcLeg, and that's the same thing. That's the Bureau of Legislative Research. That's our partisan agency that helps us write bills. They film everything. They're our staff. You can go on there too and watch everything. We are transparent. You see everything live in action. Or if you want to watch what happened a week ago, they got that video too stored.
Awesome.
Well, and I will say this, don't just call your representative to complain. If he does a good job, call him and tell him that they do a good job. That way, when you call and complain, it carries a little bit more weight because you're not just envisioned as a chronic complainer.
I'll buy that.
There
Well,
you go.
thank you, Stetson. Anything else before we go?
No, we're going to get through session here, hopefully end on Wednesday, gavel out, go to special session, cut some income tax, and then kind of have a good break in the summer. And then, I'm going to gear up for re-election. I've got an election in November, and so I'm looking forward to that. And hopefully we'll get re-elected and continue the great work that District 3 wants to do in 27 session.
So you have a Democrat opponent?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you're welcome to come back when the election season gets hot and heavy if you're interested, and we'll.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we'll
you know me.
We'll do this
we'll
again.
certainly have you on multiple times between now and November. Also, we need to have some rallies out here and some get-togethers and get some crowds, get some enthusiasm going.
Well, I will tell you too, is I appreciate you both for doing this podcast. I watch it when I'm not even on or I'm traveling. I watch it, so I keep up the great work. And I appreciate the Baxter County Republican Committee and your other sponsors for funding this, because I think at the end of the day, you're doing great work exposing what's going on in our government, whether it's city, county, local, or state. You guys are doing a good job, and please keep it up and count me anytime. I will be back, and you know that.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
All right, Stetson, thank you. We'll cut you
Appreciate
loose
you guys.
now.
All right.
Go get some rest.
Save us some money while you're down there.
Yes, sir. We'll work on it. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, buddy. Have a good night.
You too.
We got a few announcements before we go. Do you want to do the advertisement again?
Yeah. Now that we got a little bit more time, I'd just like to thank our sponsors, James Boyette State Farm Insurance. He's located at 1330 Highway 62 East, 870-425-4540. Now, as you always say, being completely transparent here, he is my insurance agent.
That's okay.
But I can give you my personal experiences with him. He has been an outstanding agent. Everyone in his office is as friendly and helpful as they can be. They have home, auto, condo, renters, personal articles, business, life, health. I think they even offer pet insurance. So
oh boy,
you need to insure
I
your
need
dog.
to get in touch with them.
But and also, of course, we always want to thank Mountain Home Heat and Air. Kurt Lawrence and his crew out there on Highway 5 North just do a great job. From new installations to duct cleaning and everything in between, Mountain Home Heat and Air are the people you need to call for your HVAC needs. That's 870-425-HVAC. That's 870-425-4822. And, of course, the Baxter County Republican Committee. We would not have this podcast going had it not been for the Baxter County Republican Committee standing up and rogering up to say, yeah, we'll sponsor you.
Yep.
Because they provided the seed money to get us started. They bought the equipment and continue to support us on a weekly basis. So thank you to the Baxter County Republican Committee, which, by the way, meets tomorrow night at 214 West 7th Street at the Mountain Home VFW. If you're not a member of the Baxter County Republican Committee, but you would like to be a member and like to get involved, come join us. We meet the last Tuesday of every month at the VFW at 6 o'clock.
6 p.m.
Say again? Jay Sabella said he'll buy drinks for all the new people.
What a guy, man. I love that guy. He's a giver. So, okay. Is that all you have?
That's all I have.
Okay. And we have a few other announcements. Quorum Court meets the first Tuesday each month, 5:30 p.m. at the Baxter County Courthouse. City Council meets first and third Thursday at 5 p.m. at City Hall. Men's Club, Republican Men's Club, first Thursday each month, 11:30 a.m. at the Elks. City Planning Committee, second Monday at City Hall, 1 p.m. County Planning Committee, second Tuesday, 11 a.m. at Baxter County Courthouse. And AMP, Advertising and Promotion, third Thursday, 3 p.m., City Hall. School Board, third Thursday, 6 p.m., Admin Building on Rodeo Drive. And the Public Safety Commission, which is the old Airport Commission, which one of these days I'll pin down the exact meeting time, but I think it's as is quarterly or some
it's quarterly.
some such thing. And then, of course, Baxter County Republican Committee, last Tuesday each month, 6 p.m. VFW. That's tomorrow.
That's tomorrow. And tomorrow is our county convention, where we will be seating the people that's signed up during open filing, and we'll be electing some new officers as well. So I would certainly invite you to come and get involved. You know, we see what's happening, what happened there, at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. People in this country are really getting crazy. I did some research last night. The ICE was brought under the Homeland Security Department in 2002 after the 9/11 attack. 88 Democrats in the House voted for it, and it passed the Senate with 90 yeas, 9 nays, and 1 not voting. So the Democrats were all on board with creating ICE in 2002. What's changed? They brought in umpteen million under the Biden administration illegal aliens who have taken millions of jobs from Americans.
And they've stolen a lot of money in some cases.
Stolen a lot of money.
It seems.
Took up a lot of housing and stuff. Folks, it's time that the conservatives get involved. We don't hold no kings, no queens, no whatever rallies and stuff like the liberals do. But maybe it's time we started doing some kind of activism to let people know that we are not asleep. I know everybody says, well, I'm working for a living. Well, yeah. But the thing about it is you're not going to be working for a living if things keep going like it is.
It's your civic duty. Get involved. Find a way.
That's it.
Find a way.
That's it. So I'll get off my soapbox there, Joe.
Okay. Well, thank you, Russ, and thank you to everybody for stopping by. Thanks, Jay, for running the board. And you all have a good night. We'll see you in 1 week.